The morning sun cut through the blinds of her penthouse apartment, spilling across a mahogany desk littered with files and contracts that bore her signature. Evelyn Carter sat still in the silence, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold. To the world, she was a titan, one of the most powerful women in finance, the sole black woman in her state to own a chain of banks. Her face had graced the cover of magazines, her name was whispered in boardrooms, and her influence was undeniable. But beneath the steel of her reputation, Evelyn carried something private, a memory that refused to fade. The sight of her father, years ago, turned away from a bank office when he asked for a loan to start his business. Not the right profile, they had told him. But Evelyn, just a teenager then, saw the truth in their sneers. It was not the numbers in his account that had condemned him. It was the color of his skin. That humiliation had carved into her, driving her to build a financial empire where no one would ever be treated as less than. But wealth, she had learned, does not erase prejudice. And lately, whispers had reached her ears. Customers, especially elderly ones and those who looked like her, had complained of cold shoulders, dismissive tones, and small cruelties hidden behind professional smiles. Evelyn didn't want to believe it. Her empire was built on fairness. But doubt gnawed at her. So she decided to do something she hadn't done in years. She would strip away the armor of her power, set aside the expensive suits and chauffeur-driven car, and walk into one of her own branches not as Evelyn Carter, CEO and owner, but as Evelyn, a middle-aged black woman in simple clothes. She chose the downtown branch, one of the busiest, where her staff prided themselves on efficiency. That morning, she pulled on an old cardigan, the kind she used to wear when she was just starting out, paired it with scuffed shoes and no makeup. She left her Mercedes in the garage and hailed a cab. The bank loomed ahead, glass doors reflecting the bustling street. Evelyn hesitated before walking in, her heart thrumming with a mix of anticipation and dread. She wanted to be wrong. She wanted to discover that her staff treated everyone with dignity, that her fears were nothing but ghosts. Inside, the air was cool, the hum of computers blending with the murmur of customers waiting. Evelyn took a seat in the queue. She watched quietly as the scene unfolded. An elderly white man shuffled in, leaning on his cane. Immediately, a teller waved him over, smiling warmly, offering him a chair while she patiently explained the forms. Evelyn nodded slightly. That was how it should be. Then an elderly black woman entered, clutching a small purse, her steps uncertain. Evelyn watched the staff's posture change. No one rushed to help. When the woman approached the counter, the teller's smile thinned, her voice clipped. The old woman fumbled with her documents, clearly confused, but the teller barely looked at her, tapping the desk impatiently until the woman, flustered, stepped aside. Evelyn's stomach twisted. When it was her turn, Evelyn walked to the counter with a calm expression. The young teller, blonde hair in a tight bun, barely glanced at her. "Yes?" she asked flatly. "I'd like to inquire about opening a savings account," Evelyn said softly. The teller's eyes flicked over Evelyn's plain cardigan, the worn shoes, the absence of jewelry. She exhaled. "Minimum balance is $200. There are monthly fees if you don't meet it. You sure you want this account?" The tone was edged with condescension, almost a warning, as if Evelyn might embarrass herself by trying. Evelyn's lips pressed together. "Yes," she said simply. The teller pulled out forms and shoved them across. "Fill these out. If you don't understand, there's a brochure." Evelyn took the papers, her fingers tightening around them. She knew every detail of those forms, having designed them herself. But she pretended to read, letting her silence draw out. Around her, she heard snippets, an employee muttering about time wasters,
another telling a young black man to try online banking instead when he asked a simple question.
Then came the moment that broke her. At the far end of the lobby, an elderly black man in a worn cap struggled with a deposit slip. He approached a staff member, asking for help. The staffer rolled her eyes, leaned toward a colleague, and whispered loudly enough for Evelyn to hear, "These people never get it right." Both women chuckled. The old man's face crumpled, and he stepped back, defeated. Evelyn rose from her seat and crossed the floor. "May I help you, sir?" she asked gently. The man looked at her with surprise, then relief. "Thank you, ma'am. These forms, they confuse me sometimes." She guided him through the slip, her hands steady, her voice patient. When he finished, he thanked her with a smile that carried both gratitude and weariness. Evelyn returned to her chair, her jaw tight, her heart burning with rage. She spent another hour there, quietly observing, absorbing every sneer, every sigh, every subtle cruelty. By the time she left, she had seen enough. The people she trusted to carry her vision were betraying it, staining her name with the same poison she had fought her entire life to destroy. That night, Evelyn sat alone in her study, the city lights flickering outside. She poured herself a glass of wine, but barely touched it. Instead, she opened her notebook and began to write. Names, behaviors, exact words. She documented it all. Revenge, she decided, would not come as rage, it would come as justice. The next morning, her assistant scheduled a surprise visit to the same branch, this time with the CEO herself. The staff straightened their ties, polished their smiles, ready to impress. They didn't know that their test had already been graded, and they had failed spectacularly. But Evelyn didn't storm in with fury. Not yet. She played her part, calm, gracious, professional. She asked for reports, spoke with the manager, nodded at their rehearsed lines. But her eyes searched for those faces. The teller with the bun, the whispering staffer, the ones who thought dignity was something they could ration based on skin and age. As the meeting closed, she asked them to assemble in the main lobby. Her voice, smooth and commanding, carried across the marble floors. "This bank," she began, "was built on a promise that no one who walks through these doors would feel small. A promise that respect is not negotiable, not conditional, not optional." The staff nodded, smiling, thinking they were being praised. Evelyn's eyes sharpened. "Yesterday," she continued, "I came here, not as myself, not as your employer. I came as a customer. Do you know how I was treated?" The silence was immediate, sharp as glass. Faces shifted, smiles faltered. The blonde teller's eyes widened, then darted away. "I was dismissed, patronized, humiliated." Evelyn's voice cut through the room like a blade. And worse, I watched as elderly black customers were treated with disdain, ignored, mocked, by the very people I trusted to represent me. Gasps rippled through the room. The manager stammered, "Miss Carter, surely this must be—" "Silence," Evelyn said. Her eyes blazed. "Do not insult me further with excuses. I saw it with my own eyes. I heard the words, and I will not allow my father's memory, my family's struggle, to be spat on inside my own walls." The weight of her fury filled the room. Some staff lowered their heads, others looked pale, desperate. Evelyn let the silence stretch, let them feel the gravity of what they had done. "This is not just about discipline," she finally said. "This is about cleansing. This is about ripping out the rot before it spreads further. And make no mistake, there will be consequences." Her words landed like thunder, and she left them standing in stunned silence, the storm only just beginning. The boardroom was silent when Evelyn entered. Every executive, every regional manager, every face that claimed to uphold the Carter banking name was gathered around the polished oak table. Her assistant shut the door behind her, and Evelyn placed a small stack of files in front of her seat before sitting down. The tension was thick, but she let it breathe. She wanted them to squirm.
"I called you here," she began slowly, her voice controlled, deliberate, "because yesterday I saw something that I can never unsee. Something that cuts deeper than financial losses, deeper than mistakes on a balance sheet." She leaned forward, her eyes locking on each of them in turn. "I saw contempt. I saw prejudice, and I saw it in my own house." The regional director cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter, if you could clarify." Evelyn slapped a file on the table. The sound cracked like a whip. "No clarifications. Facts. At the downtown branch, your staff mocked an elderly black customer. They dismissed me as though I were nothing. They questioned whether I even had enough money to open an account. This," she pointed at the file, "is my report, word for word, names included." The room was stone. Some executives shifted, others stared at the table. Evelyn felt her anger coil tighter. "Do you know what I realized last night? That despite all my years, despite the empire I've built, my staff still feel bold enough to act out their prejudices in plain sight. What do you think they do when no one is watching?" No one answered. Evelyn straightened, her voice cold. "There will be an audit. Every branch, every department. I want records of complaints, recordings, surveillance footage, and I will review them myself. This is not just about numbers anymore. It's about the soul of this institution." Her assistant began handing out sealed envelopes. Each manager took one, opening it with trembling hands. Inside were letters of suspension, dismissal, or probation notices for the staff she had witnessed personally. The blonde teller, the whispering clerks, even the branch manager. Evelyn's message was clear. This was no performance. This was justice. "I founded this bank to break a cycle," she continued, her voice rising, "to ensure that no one, no matter their color, age, or station, would ever feel the humiliation my father felt when he was turned away. And yet I walk into my own bank and see that very poison alive and thriving. I will burn it out. I will gut it, and I will rebuild this place with people who understand what dignity means." Her words reverberated through the glass walls. For a moment, no one dared breathe. Then Evelyn stood, gathering her files. "We begin today. If you cannot stand with me, then you will step aside, because I will not let my father's dream be soiled by small-minded people in suits." She left them there, shaken, knowing their world had shifted. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Evelyn moved like a storm through her empire. She visited branches unannounced, dressed again in plain clothes, watching carefully. Some staff recognized her, nervous and eager to impress, but others revealed themselves quickly. She noted every detail. In some places she found bright lights, employees who treated every customer with patience and kindness, regardless of who they were. Those people she pulled aside, promoted and rewarded generously. But for the others, the ones who thought they could hide their disdain behind thin smiles, their days were numbered. Evelyn fired dozens within weeks, sometimes on the spot. Word spread fast. Carter banking was no longer safe for those who carried prejudice in their pockets. One of the most dramatic moments came when she returned to the downtown branch. The elderly black man she had helped with his deposit slip was there again, standing uncertainly in line. This time, Evelyn approached him directly. "Mr. Harris, isn't it?" she asked gently. He blinked in surprise. "You remember my name?" "Of course I do," she said. "I reminded you yesterday why I built this bank." He looked at her, confused. She smiled. "I am Evelyn Carter. I own this bank, and I want to offer you something."
The old man's eyes widened. Evelyn led him to the office and explained. She wanted him to work part-time as a customer service advisor. His years as a retired accountant had given him a deep understanding of people, and his compassion was obvious. "Who better," she said, "to guide customers than someone who knows what it feels like to be dismissed, and who will never allow anyone else to feel it?" Tears welled in his eyes. "I never thought," he stammered. Evelyn squeezed his hand. "Neither did my father, when he was turned away all those years ago. But today, we changed that." News of his hiring spread through the branch like wildfire. The very staff who had rolled their eyes at him now had to work under his guidance. For Evelyn, it was poetic justice, the reversal of power, the triumph of dignity. But Evelyn's revenge was not just personal. She pushed further, harder. She announced a new policy across all her banks. Every employee, from tellers to managers, would undergo rigorous training in equity, respect, and community service. Secret shoppers, often elderly or black customers, would visit branches regularly, reporting directly to her. Bonuses were tied not only to performance, but to behavior, to proof of compassion and fairness. And the final blow. Evelyn launched a foundation in her father's name, funding small business loans for minorities and elderly applicants, the very people who had once been dismissed as unworthy. The same banks that had once turned them away now lined up to welcome them, trained and reminded that their jobs depended on it. At the launch event, Evelyn stood before reporters, cameras flashing, her voice strong and unwavering. "For too long," she declared, "respect has been rationed. For too long, dignity has been conditional. Not in my house, not in my banks. We will lead by example. And if that makes people uncomfortable, then let them go find comfort somewhere else." The applause thundered, but Evelyn's mind wandered back to her father. She pictured him in his worn suit, standing at that bank counter years ago, turned away with nothing but shame. And she imagined his face now, proud, watching his daughter not only succeed, but tear down the very barriers that had once stood in his way. In the weeks that followed, customers noticed the difference. Elderly men and women were greeted with warmth, guided with patience. Black families walked into Carter Banks and walked out with dignity intact. Word spread, and soon business grew, stronger than ever. But Evelyn never forgot the sting of that cardigan-clad day. She kept the clothes she wore folded in a box, a reminder of what she saw when she stripped away her power. Sometimes late at night, she would open it, touch the fabric, and let the anger simmer again. Not to consume her, but to fuel her vigilance. Because Evelyn Carter knew one truth above all. Racism never truly dies. It hides, it shifts, it waits for moments of silence. And so she vowed never to be silent again. Her revenge was not just in firing those who wronged her, nor in elevating those who deserved better. Her revenge was in rewriting the rules entirely, in creating a world where prejudice had no shelter, not in her name, not in her empire.
And as the years went on, customers came to know one thing. When they walked through the doors of Carter Banking, no matter their color, their age, or their clothes, they would be seen, they would be heard, and above all, they would be respected, because the black woman who owned the banks had made sure of it.